Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu salam, rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Tara Khalid. I'd like to welcome to our program here at Sharjah Media Corporation, doing good, and we hope by Allah's mercy and grace that the believers are doing good at this particular time and in the future. And those of you who are still not accepted the path of truth, that Allah will guide you and enlighten your heart towards the truth. I want to read one small hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, and he said more or less, keep away from ill thinking. Keep away from ill thinking, because ill thinking is the greatest falsehood. This is collected by Bukhari. Ill thinking is the greatest falsehood. Now, it is very interesting, and there are people who disagree with me, and of course, I've had this discussion with many people today as we're looking at this so-called technological age take shape and move forward. I believe that, unfortunately, that many of the devices that we have today, which are supposed to enable us, have actually overcome people's ability to think, unfortunately. And it has right now, we're not even talking about in the future, that we've developed a kind of dependency where people, for example, if we take simple arithmetic, and I myself have used this example, I ask you to do the same thing. Try it sometime. I've asked many people just to add up 3 columns of numbers, okay, like 12, 13, and 17, for example. Can you add that up for me and just give me an answer? And what I found is, this is a simple addition, isn't it? Okay, but what I found that most people, the first thing they will do is turn to their telephone, okay, and go to the calculator. The point I'm making is that there are many other instances, I'm just using one, that people have developed this dependency on these devices, which means what? That we're less apt to think about something. If you ask, and we've done this also with young people, it says, if you had to live on your own and your parents were not there to take care of you, what would you do? How would you survive? There was no one around. There was no friends, no family. You're all of a sudden by yourself. And you know what most people say? I will go to Google, okay, as example. And this is what I've seen in most instances. Again, going to the devices. And I'm not against the devices, but what I'm saying is that people now are getting away from, number one, the connection with Allah, with God. Number two, from using the good sense that God has given us, and have become reliant on the information systems, whatever they might be. Similarly, many people do not understand or do not see how we're being impacted by the devices, how our thoughts, if we're just talking about, we call stinking thinking, if we just talk about that how much of our thoughts influenced by these devices, such as this one, which is one of the major ones. Any audio-visual device, the tremendous amount of impact it has on us. But both that which we can see and that's which happens to us in our subconscious mind. So that, and I think all of us have experienced this, thoughts are coming, statements are coming that are not really something that I want to repeat. It's not something that I repeat in front of other people. But what has happened is I've ingested this dialogue or this type of dialogue from a device. And of course, my subconscious has recorded it. So I might find myself verbalizing a dialogue that's not even the kind of dialogue that I normally use. Or becomes integrated into my common dialogue, which is something that comes up, we say, from way out in left field somewhere. I'd say, where did that come from? And if that has happened to you before, well, surely it's happened to me. So thinking ill, first thing, thinking ill, in many instances and I cannot say by all instances, many instances starts with seeing and hearing. Seeing negative images, listening to negative speech. And those two together begin to influence our dialogue, our thinking, and of course what comes after that, our actions. Why? It stimulates our desires. Simple. Let's take a simple one in which people may not want to talk about, but it's a reality. A man sees a beautiful woman. Now, he can do many things depending upon what type of man he is, what type of morals he has, what type of restrictions he feels that he has according to the law. Because we have some people who don't feel there are any restrictions for them. He may attack the woman. He may kidnap the woman. He may rob the woman. He may beat the woman. So there are so many things that he might do depending upon his particular persuasion. And we need to look at, okay, what are the influences of that individual? What are the things that influence him to make him that type of being? What are the things that consistently, for example, we find in the life of a serial killer, as an example? And I don't want to go off on a tangent on this, but I'm just saying, if we look at this kind of extreme behavior, or a terrorist, if we look at this kind of extreme behavior, and we look at the ingredients that influence this type of mentality, if we look at ourselves, where am I in relationship to those people? Because most of us say, I'm nowhere near that. I'm nowhere near these two extremes. But if we look at ourselves closely, we says, is there something in your mind that would be similar to them, but you're afraid to act upon it? Or you fear Allah, you fear God, or you fear the law? An example. There was an example, it's a horrible example, but there was a poll that was held at a university, and they asked these young men, if you had an opportunity to rape a woman and to get away with it, how many of you would do it? And 70% of the young men at the university said they would, if they thought they could get away with it, meaning that if it was lawful and they did it and nothing would happen to them. So what does that go back to? Of course, these 70% of them would not do it, but at the same time, what does it go back to? It goes back to what? The idea, the concept that you can do something as horrible as this and get some gain from it, some benefit from it. Not thinking that I will have to answer to my Lord for this. That there's a price to pay for not being a disciplined person. Disciplined in the sense, I mean, being obedient to the laws of my Lord, which in many instances are consistent with the laws of the land. But and of course, these types of discussions, many people don't have these discussions. And many people say, well, brother, this is kind of far out. But I think that myself dealing with a lot of young people and young men in particular, that we need to get into the heads of these young men and see where it is that they're going and what are the things that are distracting them. Because we find that many of them, of course, if you sit with them, the things which they think are okay are very far away from what is good and healthy for them and good and healthy for society. And it doesn't mean that, of course, their buttons will be pushed or they will not have control. But at the same time, we need to address that. And I'm saying this, and I'm saying the mature male and female in our societies need to address this. And there is not, generally speaking, enough interaction between them with our young people to show them positive images. So they're following the images in games. And they're being molded, their mentality in many instances is being molded by games or by movies. And this is factual. And there are a lot of people in denial about this, but I ask you, any one of you today, no, don't wait for tomorrow, any adult or any young person, just sit with youngsters younger than you. If you're a teenager, sit with some preteens. Just sit with a group of preteens and just watch them and listen to what they say. And ask them a few questions, just quietly, and see. See what their mentality is like. And I'm talking about globally. And especially if you're aware of the kinds of games and the kinds of things that they do on a regular basis and what their common dialogue is among themselves. And of course, some better than others, of course, and some worse than others. My point is that adults, wherever we are in the world, need to take more responsibility for our young people, need to do more to be positive role models and mentors for them, need to establish programs where there are no programs, or to participate or support programs that do exist, that are doing positive things in whatever community there might be. And if there isn't such a thing in the community where you live, do not be fooled because you live in a beautiful neighborhood. Well, everybody in this neighborhood is very wealthy. They all have housemaids. They have gardens with gates and walls around their houses. This doesn't ensure anything. Only thing that ensures is that people from outside can't get inside unless they pass through their security. That's all. It has nothing to do with thoughts and media and all the types of apps that are available today, those that we know and those which we don't know. Mentality that is being spread globally. It has nothing to do with that. And this is what we need to understand, that modern society is being impacted by devices. And the devices are having major impact on our children, wherever it is that you might be in the world. And those that don't have the devices, there are others that do, who would influence them. And those people who have it, they look up to the ones who have it. And the ones who have it, they're proud because they have it, because it gives them status. And parents need to wake up to this and come into the real world and look and see what the impact of this is. Sit with psychiatrists, sociologists in your environment, educators, listen to them, see what they're dealing with. The people are dealing with this every day. The police department, listen to them, see what's going on sociologically in your environment, and be a part of the change, meaning that positive change where you live. And people say, well, our society, we start drinking when we're 12 years old. I says, oh, but your society may be like that. Is that something that you really want for your child? As an adult, don't you realize what course that can take? Is that something acceptable for you? You don't want more than that for your child. You don't want to raise your child differently, even though you might grow up in that environment. You don't want to do something to change that. You just submit yourself to it, as an example. And unfortunately, many people, they're like that. And the Prophet ﷺ said more or less, by Allah, he cannot be a mu'min, by Allah, he cannot be a mu'min, by Allah, he cannot be a mu'min. And he said, who? The commander said, who? He answered, he from whose misdeeds his neighbor is not safe. And again, the Prophet ﷺ said, a person who believes in Allah and the hereafter should speak about good things or else should keep quiet. It's collected by Bukhari. So if we're concerned about our society, then we should be concerned about the type of images that are presented to the society as a whole. And of course, all of us individually are concerned about our children and the people who are in our care. That goes without question. But we should have concern for the society as a whole and the impact that these things have on the society. Now, there are many people, of course, that profit from this, as we well know. So there is a conflict there. And in many instances, these people and whoever it is that they represent are very influential. But there's something that we have to look at, which is essential to understand. That nothing, the smallest movement of your finger cannot happen without the permission of God. Smallest thing. What is it? So how does that translate? Very simply, that if we are people who are trying to uphold righteousness in the face of efforts to take people astray, to say? Do we not believe that God, that Allah, will help us in this? Sure, this path may be difficult and challenging, without question. Because there are many times the people of influence, they are just that, very influential. They have a great deal of influence. But does that mean that we should not address the issues? Does it mean that we should watch our children be destroyed because someone says, well, I have the ability to do so and so and so, you're a nobody? What you're saying, okay, there might be a certain amount of truth to that, but listen, I control this and this is what I'm doing. If you don't like it, tough. So we have to call the people and remind the people that every single soul has to account to Allah. It doesn't matter what you believe or you say, I disbelieve. That's shame. If you say, well, I don't believe, shame on you. Because you will. If you don't now, you'll be in a situation where you will, and it will be too late. So whatever an individual is manipulating today to do harm to people, it is temporary. It is temporary. Allah has given him respite for a short time. And it is a test for us. What do I mean for us? It is a test for those of us who claim to understand or have some understanding of the truth and have the concern for the condition of humanity, that everyone knows the truth. And the choices, of course, they lay with us. But everyone has the truth available to him. If he chooses, he will be successful. If he chooses the other path of those people in disbelief, then he will be a failure. And all of the other successes in his life will be of no value for him. So if we look at this and take it in perspective as where we are today, think about where it is that you're living today, your society, your neighborhood, your family. How will you protect them from the evil influences that will lead them astray and ultimately lead them to the disobedience of Allah, which will take them to the hellfire? So we leave you with this. I know people say, this kind of heavy, brother. I'm not responsible person in this way, but the responsibility lies with those who would choose to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala under all conditions. My name is Tariq Khalid. I'd like to thank you for joining us here at Sharjah Media Corporation on Doing Good. And may you continue to do good, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala incline all of those people who are involved in evil deeds towards the truth. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.